Okay, so today we've got kind of a special show. Hopefully everyone's hearing us okay. We're talking to Gary Peacock about Dakota Pacific they're doing some development up in Summit County, and apparently there's some untoward things going on. So we're going to be talking with Gary. He's going to kind of fill us in on
can I just add that this show isn't just for Summit County residents. This is something what Gary's going to get into with us is happening everywhere. This is not just Summit County. Twilla County's experienced this, Salt Lake County, so many counties, and not just in Utah. This is nationwide. This affects all of us. And so what we're going to go into with what's happening in Summit County, I hope you will listen and please engage. Give us a call. The number should be on the number's right here on the screen. So give us a call. We want to hear from you residents in Summit County. And we really appreciate Mr. Peacock joining us today because he's actually a citizen that got involved, and that we appreciate.
All right, Gary, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. All right. So
very good.
Give us kind of a heads up as to what's going on there in Summit County.
Well, it's a pretty complex story, but it started about, in 2008, actually, when a piece of property was bought by the Boyer Corporation, and the property they bought had an entitlement to it. And it was from a 2008 development agreement that the county had devised and signed that entitlement. So that was for, basically it was a tech parcel, and they were supposed to build office buildings and or medical labs and or light technology manufacturing. And the original concept was to diversify the economy up here in Summit County, since most of our economy is related to tourism, the novelty of Park City. In the wintertime, of course, we have 3 world-class resorts up here on our side of the mountain. On the other side is Alta and Snowbird, but we have the Canyons, Park City Mountain Resort in Deer Valley. So Boyer apparently tried to attract some tech tenants, and they did get one. It was Skull Candy, came up here and built a headquarters, pretty substantial facility, and then that was the end of it. So then Boyer Corporation ended up selling it to Dakota Pacific. And the story is that when Dakota Pacific purchased the land, they understood the entitlements were for a tech park, but they didn't want to build a tech park. So they'd asked the county if they would be receptive to a large project that would be residential based. So
Gary,
the county,
do you mind?
Yes.
I'm sorry. So initially you're saying that as part of zoning goes, this was initially commercial, just right out of the gate. This was a commercial property, and they went to the council and asked it to be deemed residential.
They asked it to be, they wanted an amendment to the entitlement. So that would have to be a separate agreement, and the county would have to agree to that. So Dakota Pacific came with a massive plan. It's the parcel is about 60 acres. And so they came up with a 58-acre plan that was 1,100 units, a hotel, commercial, and retail space right in the middle of Kimball Junction.
Wow.
And so this went somewhat unnoticed in Park City for a year or two. There was a hardcore group of community activists that were going to the council meetings and opposing that development, but the community by and large was totally unaware of this until about October of 2021. And that's when I found out about this development. And so I was shocked about it. So I started publishing on Nextdoor and other media inside of Park City and describing this project. I had a map that showed the 30 some odd buildings. And people were shocked and astounded that they'd never heard of this. So the county, in the meantime, was all ready to vote on this. In 2021, they had one public comment meeting, not very well attended, in late January of 2021. And by August, they were prepared to vote 4-1 for this project. And so they were kind of trying to tweak the project and get it a little more green. And so in the meantime, the community became not only awakened, but they became outraged. And they were outraged because nobody had bothered to tell the community about this. And certainly not Dakota Pacific. They did nothing to try to sell this to the community. Instead, all their time and effort in trying to convince just 3 of the 5 county councilors. So on December 1st, 2021, they had only the second public comment meeting in 2021. And we got the biggest turnout that anybody had ever seen in the history of Summit County. We got right around 1,000 people to come. It was at the New Park Hotel. The fire department had to kick people out because we were over the occupancy. There were hundreds of people on Zoom. It was a 5-hour meeting. 80 people spoke against that project. And I would say it was about 95% against that project. On December 15th, Dakota Pacific came back and put a pause on their land application. And they said, well, we're going to rethink this project in the face of so much community opposition, and we'll go back, and we've heard interesting ideas for this project. So basically, they went silent for, until about sometime in 2022 or early 2023, they came back with a slightly modified project. That project threw out the hotel. The number of units went down to 721 total units. It had a central park in it. It had 2 uncovered pickleball courts, but mostly it had townhomes and condos, and it had 200 affordable housing units. So this is the main interest. The county is interested in this project to begin with, is because affordable housing is in dire need across the state. The state of Utah, this is where it all gets interesting. The state of Utah has been encouraging, twisting arms even in the various municipalities and counties, and this is going up across the country, where states are trying to force municipalities to add affordable housing whether or not they want it. So they came back with this new project, and there were a bunch of discussions about it, and the community came back last year. We had 2 meetings. About 700 people attended those in person, and then we had lots of people on Zoom. And again, 95% against this. And so the council said they take all this into consideration, and then they would vote on it. So I guess it was sometime, I'm guessing around February, March, they announced that there'd be a decision vote in Colville at 5 o'clock on a certain day. So a bunch of us drove out to hear the decision, and they didn't take a vote. They announced instead that they were suing Dakota Pacific and for monetary damages also.
What are they suing them for? What's the gist of the lawsuit? Is it because Dakota Pacific kept changing the idea of the development, or what's the lawsuit about?
No, I left out a very important part of interest in the chronology of this, but during the 2 years since 2021, after Dakota Pacific was told by the community that this was not acceptable, they went, and instead of just working on their project, they went to the state legislature, and they got a bill passed that basically said that the county would have to agree to a proposal like this if it had an HTRZ, which is a transit zone. It's essentially a glorified bus stop. And so they said, well, how about, so the county looked at that and they said, well, we don't think that applies. And they met all the requirements of the legislation. And so they said, well, we're not going to approve this yet. There's still a lot more issues to discuss. So in last year's legislative session, a representative, a state senator from Cache Valley, his name's Casey Snyder. Casey Snyder got a law passed called SB 84. And that law specifically entitled a company to 39 units per acre, which just happened to exactly overlay on the Dakota Pacific project. And while it did not specify Dakota Pacific, it just said a developer that wants to build some affordable housing and market rate units, they don't have to get the approval of the county.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. We had legislators actually going behind the backs of local government.
Yes, and there was, I can tell you that not just the community, but the counselors were outraged because Dakota Pacific had been extremely deceptive with this. They'd been working with their lobbyists and with the leadership. And this bill, SB 84, was passed in the last 3 days of the legislative session. It came out of a committee, which is the Natural Resources Committee. Do you think that a project like this belongs in the Natural Resources Committee? No, it doesn't. And so we heard about this. And so Roger Armstrong, one of the counselors here, and other people went down to the Hill, and they wanted to testify about this bill. Well, guess what? The committee didn't hear them. They went down, spent 3 hours waiting in line, and at the end of the day, they said, well, that's all the time we have. And the next day, they said the same thing. So no comment from the elected counselors from Summit County. So that law got passed, signed by Governor Cox, who basically said that he supported this bill because it had there was a initiative inside the state to support affordable housing. But the truth is that hardly any legislators read that bill. Basically, Brad Wilson.
Hold on. This is my shocked face. Go on.
None of the legislators, very few of them actually read that piece of legislation. They were told by the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson, they were told to vote for it. So they all vote for it. It was a massive yes. The law passed. And then that's when the county decided to sue. So they the legal department, a very formidable legal department, by the way. There have been other issues in Summit County, and the legal department here is very capable, and they sued in Summit County court, and guess what? They won. They basically said that that law did not apply to Summit County. And the reason for this is, as we understand it, is that in the Utah State Constitution, it says specifically that the legislature shall not abridge or invalidate any contracts inside a municipality or county. So the county had a contract. This land was sold with an entitlement. It was sold with the 2008 Tech Park Development Agreement. And so the court said, no, that law doesn't apply. So Dakota Pacific came back and said, oh, we're going to appeal that. So that went on for the rest of the year, last year. And then interesting thing happened. The council started inviting people from the state legislature to come up, legislature, I should say. They invited people to come up and see Summit County, because certain people in the legislature had these impressions about what Summit County was like. You know, it's Park City, and they're all rich up here in Park City, and they're elitists, and they're all Democrats. And so there was, we felt like they really didn't understand Summit County very well. So the counselors invited people up, including Casey Snyder. And while he was up here late last year, he decided that he asked if the county and the developer could meet and try to work out their differences. And
mediation.
Not mediation. It was a series of working sessions that were in public. You could attend these meetings. You could view them on Zoom. They recorded the meetings. You could look at the meetings later on Facebook. So we've had a series. We've had about 4 or 5 of these meetings, which have been completely non-productive. The first 2 meetings were on transportation, and we had estimated that there'd be about 3,000 more cars in Kimball Junction than there are today. Insane. It is insane.
That's insane traffic.
If you go out today, right now, 224 is jammed with skiers starting to leave the resorts. It's over an hour from Deer Valley to 80 right now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's doing the opposite of what the initial idea was. And that was to bring in business that is going to have people come and go home and actually take some of that tech industry that Lehigh's having, some of that development, get a little Silicon Slopes happening in the most beautiful city ever. But it's actually causing people to live there, which affordable housing is always relative. And this is what I tell everyone. What's affordable to you may not be affordable to me. And they're talking apartments. Is that right?
Yes, apartments for rent. And they would, you would qualify for affordable housing based on the average median income in the county, which is about $150,000.
Oh, is that it? Oh. So now you're adding a commuter's
double
nightmare.
The state's median income.
Hold on.
People renting are probably going out of the city to work, or, I mean, this is a commuter.
It sounds like a comedy show where the super rich drive by the almost rich and call them hillbillies. It's just too great.
Yes, the billionaires are pushing out the millionaires. So let me just tell you, you started laughing too quick, but I need to explain what this affordable housing and what AMI has to do with this. So the way that people would qualify if they were interested in one of these apartments, a one bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom, they have a number of units that are available for different income levels. So if you, let's say that you only had 40% income of the 150,000. So 40%, half would be 75K. So call it 60K, 55K. If your income was 55K, you could apply for the 40% affordable housing. Then they have another category for 60% and another category for 80%. Okay. So then various people with different incomes could in fact get an apartment at a substandard rates, sub-market rates, I should say. The housing up here is very expensive. To buy a property, it's very expensive. To rent a property, it's very expensive. So, but that's only a couple hundred units. In the meantime, there's over 500 market rate condos and townhomes that they'd be selling for millions of dollars.
And that's why they're doing. I was going to ask, because when you first mentioned affordable housing, I thought, yeah, that's good. But commercial developments are usually more profitable to build if you get cut in on that. But when you mention that 500 units at, $1 million an apartment or whatever it is, that flips
it's way
the scale.
more than that. If you could get one for $1 million, it'd be great. They'd sell out in about 2 hours.
But what we're talking to is infrastructure.
That's what they're banking on.
And usually that infrastructure lays at the hands of the council to cover. If the developer's got a plan for infrastructure, that's got to include schools for these people. It's got to include traffic studies. I mean, Kimball Junction is not getting any bigger. How are they going to do this?
Let me address that for you. It's very interesting. So, yes, the people of Summit County came to these public comment meetings and they said, oh, okay, you're going to have all these additional people here. They're going to have children. They're going to have cars. So that means that's going to put a burden on the traffic, first of all.
Natural resources.
It's going to put a burden on water. There's a water requirement for a 58-acre complex like this. There is going to be a need for the expansion of schools. You're going to need police and fire. You're going to need to increase the capacity for that. And then just all the retail things. If you ever go up to Smith's here in Kimball Junction during the ski season, it's impossible to park in the parking lot. And there's long lines with all the tourists, buying stuff. So the truth is that the council is not allowed by law to take into account the infrastructure burden. There is no study to see what the impact is on the infrastructure.
Unbelievable.
And they're not allowed. It is unbelievable. They're not allowed to take that into account. Now, you mentioned a traffic study. Here's another. I just wrote an article for Nextdoor in the last few days, and I called it Summit County Council Theater of the Absurd. They are basically saying that the tech park idea is obsolete. And anyway, the tech park is going to cause more traffic. So we naturally asked, why do you believe that? And they said, oh, because of the traffic study. Right. There's been 2 traffic studies done. Guess who did those traffic studies?
Dakota Pacific.
Okay.
They did their lobbyists did it in their office on a Thursday morning before they had a meeting with the legislators.
Practically, that's pretty close because they published 2,000 pages of this traffic study. And the county said, well, we're not going to get told by this traffic study. It's obvious that Dakota Pacific is commissioning this and paying for it. So we're going to hire a audit firm. And to make sure they're impartial, we're going to hire it out of state. So hire they did. They hired a firm in the Northeast, and they came in and they said, oh, their process is good. We audited it and the process is good. Okay, well, how many cars did you count? None. Did you look at times through Ute and Olympic boulevards? How long a wait is there?
What time of year?
Yeah, here's the key. I'm getting to that. You're exactly
Sorry.
right. You must know you have just exactly the right questions to ask here, because the study was done using UDOT cameras, and they did the study in one day in April after the ski season and during midweek. They didn't take a weekend. They didn't do it during. And then,
This is
as
absurd.
I said, they did 2 studies. They had the audacity to tell us that the second study, which was the more recent study, they said, well, it looks like the traffic's easing. It's like everybody's like the council people said, well, I'm sorry, but anecdotally, this can't be true because we're all experiencing these huge wait times to get in and out of Kimball Junction. It's not easing, it's increasing. And
We did the study between 2 a.m. and 2:15 a.m. on a Thursday.
Right. Yeah, they saw 6 cars. What are you guys complaining about? That's basically, so we had an independent traffic expert here in Park City, and he looked at that, and he did a thorough analysis of the study, sent the council his view of this, saying the study is completely invalid. But now I'm back to this firm that the county hired to audit. It was in the Northeast, right? It turns out that they have an office in Salt Lake City, which the county, don't ask me what kind of incompetent person decided on that company without checking to see if they had an office in Salt Lake City, but they did. And the traffic study industry, that business is a tiny little business. Everybody knows everybody in this industry. So, so the traffic studies were invalid. The audit, which was only to audit the process, it didn't actually look at any of the data, and they didn't take any data.
And I bet they took a lot of money out of that council.
Well, it was paid for by Dakota Pacific.
Of course it was.
I mean, the council, you're right. The council paid for the audit. I don't know how much they paid for that, but now this was that study. The latest study is maybe 18 months old. And now that the council, for some reason, is now supporting this development again, they go back and they quote this study, revising the history, where we thoroughly debunked that traffic study. And now the council themselves are saying, well, the traffic study, it basically shows that the tech park will have more cars. Now, let me ask you this. How could they know that it has more cars without knowing what kind of business is going to be there, the density
magic
of the
ball. They have a magic ball.
They have
They're
no
guessing.
way. They have no way of knowing that. And intuitively, if you think about it, people that come to work are going to park in a parking space. Maybe they go to lunch. When they're done, they leave. People that live in Kimball Junction at the Dakota Pacific project, they're going to have multiple cars, and they are going to live in Park City. So they're taking their car and they're going everywhere, 24 hours a day, on weekends, during holidays. It just makes sense that a residential development is going to have more traffic.
You said that they just assumed. you said early on that they just assumed that you're all Democrats in your county, you're all rich, all of that. And I want to look at that. Your council is all Democrat, and a lot of all your elected offices are. I'm wondering, don't you have 2 seats open this election season, and you have some three? So the people of Summit County, they can keep voting blue and get more of the same. Or maybe it's time they put some different candidates in there who will look at it from a more conservative viewpoint.
This doesn't sound like it's a Republican Democrat thing, because it sounds like the Democratic council's trying to stop it.
No, they're not. Now they've just agreed to go along with it.
It's the Republicans in our state house that backed them.
It's a bipartisan here. The Republican Party here in Park City and Summit County is against it. The Democrats are against it. Everybody's against it.
Except for
all of a sudden for it then.
Well, I can tell you why. So there's a belief that since this project has a entitlement for either tech, right now it's Tech Park, it has an entitlement. So there's a strong belief that something's going to get built on that. And so the council thinks that it would be good to get some affordable housing and try to negotiate with Dakota Pacific, get the number of units down, which they've been unable to do. They've had a half a dozen meetings, and it's still the Plan C, 721 units. The council came back and said, how about 500 units? And half of those will be affordable housing and half will be market rate. So this is hilarious. What Dakota Pacific countered with was, oh yeah, well, we can't really do 500 units, but we can add more affordable housing units, but we're going to have to add more market rate units to offset. So they are trying to get more than 727 units and add a 4th story. There's going to be 3-story buildings if they approve this. They want to add another story, 4-story buildings, and they want to take away all the structured parking and put in surface parking because that's cheaper. And then they can add more affordable housing units as long as they're allowed to add more market rate units.
Oh,
okay, now,
it's hilarious.
It's unbelievable. If it wasn't so sad, this would just be like a comedy hour.
I understand why the state legislatures want to push this through, because they're going to look good just by saying affordable housing. You need to have big quotation marks next to the comment of affordable housing there.
Yes.
But they look good doing that, and it doesn't affect them. And the legislatures that are ramming this through, are any of them from Summit County? Are any of them from a district that votes for them? So there you go. They suffer no loss.
Cache Valley is doing this, but you have to look at the legislature. The legislature is about 70% developers, and Dakota Pacific, they have
it's that low now?
Pardon me?
Did the developers lose a few in the legislature? I thought it was 85, but
well, I've heard 70%, and I've heard about 95% LDS. So
and you've got realtors, so people who benefit from developers.
That's right. So then you have this mandate. Governor Cox just sees affordable housing, and those are the magic words that every developer that comes to Summit County uses. Hey, we've got affordable housing. And then in the fine print, 2/3 of the development is actually market rate.
Well, you have to put affordable in quotes because, again, it's all relative. Affordable to one person is
every
not affordable
apartment
to another.
will have a carport, and next to the second and fourth poles of that carport is affordable housing right there. They can lay down with their cardboard box.
That's
And
right.
Well,
there's
and
We need
every
to-
location will have probably 2 cars. The parking space alone for a development like this would be huge, because when you make $150,000 a year, you don't own just one car. You're not a little family who's surviving paycheck to paycheck.
I'm going to get into the business right now of installing Tesla charging ports.
Should have done that a year
And when
ago.
they build that, I'm going to be busy for years.
Okay,
You
now
could still be busy.
there's one more wrinkle here that you haven't heard about. That's an amazing part of this whole story. So when this project was first proposed, we had a guy named Glenn Wright here. Glenn Wright was the chairman of the county council, and he decided that in order to get UDOT to be interested in Kimball Junction, they needed to build this project because it would create chaos. And that the citizens, he's actually published this strategy in the local paper. This is no secret. He wanted to create traffic chaos so that UDOT would have to come up here and provide a fix. So he's gone. He's gone now. Doug Clyde, who is another strong proponent, he's gone. So we have 2 new counselors there this last year. And so they invited UDOT. And the regional VP came from UDOT, and they said the following. Well, first of all, we don't know what the solution is, but we have 3 different alternatives. Option B, which has been the favored option in Park City for the last couple of years, turns out when you actually get down to the details, they wanted to have an underpass. They were going to dig out 248, an underpass to bypass Ute and Olympic Boulevards, but to accommodate all the traffic in Kimball Junction, they had to put left turn lanes, right turn lanes. They had to put frontage roads. This thing turned
So
into
how much does that project
12
cost? Oh no, you're freezing. You said 12. Is there a B after that? Okay. Gary, stop for 1 second.
project.
Okay,
At
stop for 1
160
second.
You
Gary,
So then UDOT
you
said,
froze
well,
up there. We missed
Gary,
we
Gary.
missed the number. We missed the
you stopped after left-hand turn lanes, and I asked, well,
$160
how much is that going
million.
to cost?
Ooh.
160 million, and that's not. What did you say initially for the underpass? Because you said 12, and then you
12
cut out
lanes.
12 lanes.
12 lanes. 12 lanes. Kimball Junction, the 224 right now is 4 lanes.
Oh.
And they were
And
going
that's
to add
Utah
8
tax
more
dollars, not Summit County. That's from UDOT, which gets paid through my tax
That's
dollars,
right.
your tax dollars.
Well, part of it is through federal grants, state grants, and
Still tax dollars.
Possibly,
Not always. Sometimes they're printed dollars.
It is all tax dollars. Yeah. So they decided that that may not work. So they're looking at 2 other options. But here's the rub. UDOT has said we can't make any decision on this until the end of the year, and it could be until 2025 before we're able to make a decision. And when they make a decision, it's going to take about 5 years to complete any project.
Well, and the
reason for that-
ridiculousness of slowing everything down for that 5 years is insane. And they want to get the Olympics back here?
Well, no, the Olympics, it turns out that UDOT kind of spilled the beans on this, and they said, well, we're going to have to do something for the Olympics, which is
Of course.
2034, if it gets approved. So our plan is a 10-year plan that we'll be able to get it done within the 10-year envelope, the window for that. And yet Dakota Pacific and the council have been saying, oh, well, if we put in this project, then we'll get help from the legislature and UDOT to be able to do it quicker. But UDOT said, hold on, that's not our process. We have a process. 2 years for an environmental study, 2 years to investigate the design, finalize the design, line up all the contractors, and 2 years to build it. This all assumes that they have no cost overruns, no construction delays, and the priority list doesn't change. There's a thing called the STIP list in Utah. Have you ever heard of the STIP list?
It's basically, it's like a triage of projects that happen within the state, isn't that?
It's a list of all the projects that are planned for the state. Do you think that Kimball Junction's on that STIP list? No, it's not. So you can't even begin to think about a project until you get on the STIP list. And they can't even talk about getting on the STIP list until the end of the year. In the meantime, the council was blowing past all these red lights and red flags and said, we want to make a decision on February 20th. The community is like, what? How can you make a decision on February 20th when we have no idea of what the traffic fix is going to be? We have no idea how it's going to be funded. We have no idea of the impact in Kimball Junction. You can't make a decision on this. So that's kind of the whole story. It's a story of treachery and the state overreaching, trying to overpower a local county that knows what they need much better than anybody in Cache Valley. That's Provo up there, Logan. It's Logan.
Yeah.
Logan has no idea of what we need, and yet you have Casey Snyder sticking his nose in Summit County's business and saying that you have to build this.
What about your congressman? What about getting Congress involved? As far as I know, we've had these projects in Tooele County, and to get on that STIP list, for example, for our Mid-Valley Highway, that was a 20-year project, and our council or our commissioners were able to get it sped up quite quickly. But it took not only our local Senate, our senators, and our House of Representatives, but it took us getting Chris Stewart involved, and Governor Cox was a lieutenant governor at the time, but Governor Herbert was on board with it. But again, this was a 20-year progress that they got sped up to 10. And that was a development being done that was it wasn't intrusive to the cities around it that was happening. You're talking about a project. It's just like when the Olympics were coming under Levitt and they redid all of I-15. That project was years. Now remember, traffic jams became an issue, and that was an insane time to live in Utah when I-15, 215 was under construction. I mean, it was an insane time. I can't even fathom what Kimball Junction looks like under construction with the amount of traffic you already have in the wintertime. And then you go even to summer, now add all the people that live there. And these are people, a lot of them, that make up plenty of money, who don't want to be inconvenienced in the first place, but they're watching their own city get ripped apart right under their noses against their will. I mean, this should come down to local government every time. So you have someone to hold accountable.
That's actually a Republican value. One of the Republican values is to push decision-making down to local levels and not have the federal government making these decisions, or even the state government.
That's a general Republican value. That's not always a Republican in office value.
Well, then you get rid of those people. Because I'm saying at this point, you've got 3 open seats. And now I'm going to lead with it. I am a Republican, and I'm the chair of the party in Tooele County. I know the chair in your county. And I even asked her about you, and she says, my goodness, this guy knows a lot. He's been highly involved. And she was Melanie. Yeah. And she has learned so much from what you have explained. And Lisa, is another person that's a Republican who works hard, and she also highly appreciates the work you've done. And this is something that we wanted to reach out to Summit County residents, but this is a statewide problem. And Jared and I live in a county that we say we're in a bubble. We have great representation, but it comes down to the fact that if you don't layer this right down to that local representative that sees you at the grocery store, that has their kids in school with your kids, that's joined you in the Rotary, somebody that you absolutely can hold accountable, you're lost. You're lost because money will always win on the bigger scale that you get. Governor Cox does need more affordable housing in this state. That is a huge problem. I don't know that you go into Park City and Summit County and start calling out for affordable housing because, again, relative term. You've got, our county, we're fighting the same thing. We need affordable housing across the state, but no one wants it in their own backyard. But there's no number on affordable housing because it is relative. And you're putting a bomb in your county that's going to affect every resident there now. Yeah. Not just for their time, but for their money. This has got to be expensive on your guys' local property tax issues and us as a state. For UDOT to do a project like this comes out of our pocket. And if it's federal grants and state grants they're getting, that also comes out of our pocket. People forget that.
Also, if they build commercial up there, commercial has a larger tax benefit.
Right.
So
that pays
the
back
commercial
the
would
community.
be paying more taxes to build the.
Well, they have in this project, besides the 721 units, they have 266,000 square feet of commercial and retail space.
Okay.
Which is not part of the traffic study. Actually.
How much did you say again? How much commercial and
266,000 square feet.
266,000 square feet. Okay.
But that's not included in their traffic study. So they're going to drive traffic to these locations. But they have no idea how much traffic they're driving.
Well, hey, if we're lucky, all I'm saying, if we're lucky, we can get a little bit of Google. They can come in here and destroy Utah like they did California. That's all I'm saying. Yeah,
no, I agree. I mean, can you imagine a 60-acre project in the middle of Kimball Junction on 224, just the building? When they start excavating and dump trucks and cement trucks and all the workers come, this is going to put a huge burden on that junction as well. And then later, if they build this later, UDOT's going to come in and they're going to spend years tearing up, putting in. There could be an underpass. There could be another whole exit. They're talking about an exit, and they're also talking about widening 224. So there's all these different projects, but nobody knows which project or how much they're going to cost or when they're going to be built. And yet the county was ready to make a decision. So now here's the other part of it. The county was in a big hurry to make this decision by February 20th. And that is because it coincides with the current legislative session. Mm-hmm. And they believed, based on conversations with people like Casey Snyder, that maybe the legislature would help them with a few things in Summit County. But nothing's promised, nothing's guaranteed. And the community doesn't have any idea of what this is. So they've been hurrying up, trying to get this done. After 4 years, they tried to get it all done in about 5 weeks with all these working meetings that they've had. And last week, they said, well, we can't get this done because Dakota Pacific hasn't given up one single unit yet. So they're down in the weeds discussing all these possibilities, and Dakota Pacific says over and over again, this project won't pencil out if we reduce the units. But the council now has extended these working sessions. And there is no date for a vote, and there is no date for public comment. So they're still trying to pass it, however, we believe.
So you're looking at there's a public meeting on Tuesday. Is that right? Where
No.
people can go?
No. There's a meeting next Thursday that people can go and witness the process, but there is no interaction with the council. And by the way, here's another interesting issue on this. The council refuses to discuss any of these issues with their constituents. And this is because Margaret Olson, who is the attorney for the county, has said that that would be unfair to the applicant. And in fact, some of the counselors have said it's illegal. So I sent a letter to Margaret Olson and I said, Margaret, could you please point me to the law that says it's illegal for people that are running for re-election? Did I freeze up again?
No, you're good.
You're telling me that it's illegal for counselors that are running for re-election. They can't say where they sit on Dakota Pacific. So I said, please produce the law.
That's like a gag order they put on Trump regarding his own trial, and that's freedom of speech. You can talk about what's happening to you. How is this even happening?
She sent me back a letter yesterday, and it says that she's not going to provide the law. She's not going to provide the case law. She says
she can't.
Because she can't.
No.
I specifically asked her to show me the law, the regulation, and the case law. She says it's counterproductive, so I'm not going to do this, but be assured that I am speaking with authority.
Wow. So she's also elected. Is that correct?
We can vote her out too. So there is a large scale effort here that if any of these counselors vote for the project, and 2 of them are up for re-election, and if they vote for this project, we're going to try to vote them out. And a Republican has a good chance of getting in there.
Well, how can we help? How can we help? I mean, I know Melanie is she's the new chair to the party there in Summit County, but she's got some great candidates. I know that it's always just kind of been assumed that that is a Democrat county. And the problem is when it starts affecting people's paychecks, and it has, their lives have been really altered the past 4 years. And again, if you don't go local, you have far more control over your own life, how you vote local, than you'll ever have how you vote federally. Even statewide, your local representation will decide for you what kind of life you live, where you live. And I don't know, how do we get the word out to, well, what we'll do is we'll invite those Republican council people on our show. We'll also reach out to those who are running again for election to see what they have to say about this, because this sounds like, and forgive me, but this sounds like Joe Biden run a campaign from his basement and just assuming he's got the win because the fix is in. If these guys don't have to answer for their decision or for their potential decision on this project, this throws red flags up to me. And they're hiding behind a DA that's allowing it.
They will have to answer because I've already started a campaign and I have plenty of support from the community that wants to vote them out if they vote for Dakota Pacific. But
what do you think? Because it sounds like earlier your council was against it. Now they're for it. What do you think's causing that change? What new information do you think they've absorbed that has changed their mind on that? Is it a further political aspirations?
Maybe it's financial.
Could it be promises of financial gain?
There could be promises of financial gain for the county.
for their
We
projects.
don't see any. I don't see any evidence of money changing hands with the counselors, although that hasn't stopped a lot of people of accusing them. But I know these people, and I don't think they would take money. Chris Robinson is one of the counselors. Look him up. He's the richest landowner in Utah.
Chris Robinson actually is a developer out in our county.
Well, he might be, but he lives here in Summit County.
Interesting.
He's a Summit County counselor. I don't know if it's the same person, but Chris Robinson's the biggest private landowner in the state. And he has land in Idaho, and I've heard Wyoming, but I know he has land in Idaho and lots of land. He's a developer. He's been friends with the CEO, John Miller, of Dakota Pacific for over 30 years. They almost went into a deal a number of years ago to buy a ranch together. So these guys are friends.
This feels like a conflict of interest.
It is.
He should recuse himself in any dealings with this agency, with Dakota Pacific. You know what? I know Chris Robinson and I actually had some sympathy for him because I've seen him sit at our county council and try to do right by the county, try to add the green space that's been asked for these developments, he's done traffic studies. He's tried. I've watched him, and it's just not one meeting. It's years of meetings in front of our council or our commission prior. I understand developers have a tough row to hoe to try to make a plan that makes sense, and they try to do it. And Chris has been great as far as trying to make something make sense. It's slow, it's growth over time, appeasing for our green space expectation. But there is a conflict of interest that just spits out at me when you say they've been friends for 30 years and a sudden change of mind. And I'm with you. I don't ever assume that these councilmen are getting money in their pockets. I've seen that accusation thrown out at our county council, at our commissioners, and that's just not how it works. However, I do see sometimes the pot gets sweetened because, hey, we're going to put money towards this other project that's going nowhere that your county can't afford. We'll buy that. We'll take care of it. Now, from an elected's perspective, they're thinking in terms of the county. Oh, this would help us in the long run. But what they're forgetting is this huge upset that it's going to cause this project that has been robbed of the voters of Summit counties to make this decision. And the voters of Summit County should matter more than the future potential of what projects could be there. I'm looking back at 2002, and yes, I lived in downtown Salt Lake for the Olympics and traveled up to Park City for the Olympics. And we had millions of people in this state for the Olympics. If we get the Olympics again, now I'm picturing the most beautiful part of driving to Park City. It's one of the most beautiful highways, and it's scary. Harley's is a little terrifying because there's already a lot of traffic there. Yeah. But they're going to be ripping apart some of the most beautiful parts of that drive. Heading into what probably got us the Olympics in the first place is how gorgeous this state is and our ability to really accommodate for outdoor sports and outdoor events, winter or summer, especially Park City in winter. This feels like it's going to hurt the very thing that makes us so special.
Well, yes, it will. And you asked earlier about the legislators. Well, our legislators are Kira Birkeland and Mike Kohler. And I've talked to Mike a number of times about this. You know, he's one guy. And the Dakota Pacific has all these friends, developers.
Lobbyists.
They have one of the best lobbyists in the state, I understand. Summit County also has a lobbyist, by the way, and so does the Park City Council has their own lobbyists.
And we do in Tooele County as well.
Yeah,
but still, Kira, what is Kira's Birkeland's idea? Because I mean, she's one person, but I've seen her basically move mountains during legislative session with some incredible bills.
She, unfortunately, both Mike Kohler and Kira Birkeland voted for Senate Bill 84 last year, and both of them apologized to the community. They both had what I'll say are totally lame excuses. One of them said that it was a fat finger mistake. The other one said they were distracted and stuff was put into the bill at the last minute and they didn't have a chance to read it. But they voted yes.
They
voted yes.
admitted to voting yes on a bill they didn't read.
No, they said they made mistakes. I've talked to them personally. So they apologized for that, but it wouldn't have made any difference because the vote was so overwhelming. But it was a symbolic vote.
It would have meant a difference to you.
Understand our problem, and they're voting against this bill, but they didn't. And I've even gone and talked to John Curtis. I called John Curtis up and tried to get him involved at a federal level. I said, Governor Cox, could you go talk to him? And he sort of off and he said, this is a state and local issue. I was sent to Congress. I got enough to worry about. And he didn't really want to get involved in this issue. But I talked to him, and I've talked to Casey Snyder and Mike Kohler. So I've been very active in communicating with all the decision makers. I've even tried to talk to Dakota Pacific, but they won't talk to me or any of the opposition here in Park City. They call us, they have a name for us. The mob. They call us the mobocracy.
Mobocracy.
Yeah. Well, because you're actually standing up and calling them out.
You're showing so much political control over this whole situation.
Because we're bringing out 1,000 people with a single point of view, a voice, because it's not like we did anything to convince all these people. All we did is just present the proposal to them. This is what they want to build. This is the projected impact on Kimball Junction. And just like you both have done, the citizens of Summit County saw this as an obvious issue that has no solution other than to go tell Dakota Pacific to pound salt, and you can't build your project. And if you want to sue, go ahead. We'll return to the lawsuit that we already won that's paused, and they can take it to the Supreme Court, the Utah State Supreme Court. And that's what the community wants. We want the county to continue the lawsuit that they've already won on. And we can hope that we can tell them no.
What options do you guys have left? Is there still a chance to get the county council to back off of this, maybe to get the state legislature to back down?
Yeah, if they said they made a mistake, well, how is Kira and Mike going to fix it? It's a new legislative session.
Okay, it's a really complex issue. Kira, there's this HTRZ, which is this glorified bus stop. There's a way to make money off of that, and the state pays for an HTRZ. And the HTRZ is required. You have to have an HTRZ as part of the state mandate. And so Kira Birkeland, this legislative session, has been trying to get that particular aspect repealed. And if it were repealed, then Dakota Pacific would have no legal argument to proceed.
That one detail could upset the whole apple cart.
Yes, but we don't even think it's going to get out of committee. And this is per Mike Kohler, who I had a conversation with last week. I've been talking to him in the last 2 weeks, trying to figure out who and what has been promised to the county council from the legislature. There was a rumor, and I'm going to make sure that you understand that there was a rumor for a while that the state was going to pay for the whole traffic fix if the county were able to approve this. Well, that turns out not to be true.
The state can't do that because UDOT has their list. They can't.
There's not even a plan. There's nothing to pay for. There's no plan right now. So it's not on the STIP list. We don't know what the plan's going to be. There's no good plan. to accommodate Dakota Pacific. And unfortunately, I call it there is a development tsunami that's building offshore. There is the Miller project. It's called Cedar Hills out in Hoytsville. They're going to be building thousands of houses out there. And I've heard that it could be as much as 20,000 new people. They're building.
Where's Hoytsville?
Hoytsville is
Colville.
east on I-80, and it is
By Colville?
how many new people in Hoytsville? Because Hoytsville is very small.
No,
they're
this
gonna
was
make it big.
the Miller family. The Miller family, they bought parcels from 30 people in Hoytsville, contiguous pieces, and they want to build this massive project. Then
Where are all the people going to work, or are they just trying to draw in the wealthy? That that's what they're doing.
Park City is fueling all the development out in the Jordanelle, in Camas. Heber is exploding because Park City's too expensive. So people that want to have access to Park City are now willing to use a small commute to get to. They say, well, I can't afford a house in Park City, so I'm going to live in Heber or Camas. So then all these construction companies are building homes for them. And so there's another project which you may or may not have heard of. It's called West Hills. There's a project over 248 that goes up over the pass there into Camas. It's called West Hills, and they want to build a whole new incorporated city there. And they're talking to the state legislature about that. So there's all
these people. This is something that I know. My brother works in Summit County as a deputy. He commutes like most deputies do, or the deputies there, they commute, but they live outside Colesville, Heber, wherever, Hennifer. So what I noticed once is the apartment complex over by all the outlet stores and stuff are loaded with the folks who are doing work in Park City. So that's a low income affordable housing unit. Yes. And why I know about it, and this is just because I rode on patrol with the deputy. And that's where we ended up a few times during police calls. Now, every time there's a development put in place like this, you either have to have some sort of low-income housing to have people on site or close that is actually doing the work to build these, or these people are commuting from outside, causing all that traffic. And yes, they go home at the end of the day too, but they're also driving down that canyon. They're driving into these small areas, and low income housing really freaks people out in all sorts of communities because they are required by law once you hit a density of a certain populace. And then they also require, you need law enforcement because there is higher crime in those areas in the low income housing. And people say, no, there's not. You're just judging. No, I'm not.
How could you say that?
It doesn't
matter. That is not true at all.
Yeah, and it is true, and they get they're the squeakiest wheel in a community usually. But how are they going to do all these developments without putting in more low income housing is what I'm getting at, because these people have to be the developers. They make these plans, but the actual, framers and road workers and every person that works on the construction site, they got to live somewhere, and a lot of them can't afford to live in Park City.
They're going to be commuting.
They'll be commuting, and that adds to the traffic.
It's like, that there's over 10,000 homes in Park City, and there's only about 6,500 residents. And the reason for that is that the really affluent people that fly their jets into Heber, they come up to $15 million house up here in the colony and spend 2 weeks here.
Right.
In the
It's a
meantime,
summer
the house
home.
is vacant for the rest of the
Right.
year. But they're building more $10 and $15 million houses in Promontory, in White Pine, and it forces, people, even affluent people can't afford to live here anymore. You're lucky I was lucky at 13 years ago, I bought a house here. I'd never be able to afford my house today. I can tell you that. But I bought a house, but most people are going to have to, the workers are going to have to commute, the seasonal workers. But I do think that it's in the best interest of the municipalities and the counties to provide some kind of affordable housing for what I call essential workers.
Exactly.
Those are the teachers, the medical, the police, the firemen. But
yeah,
I don't
based
think
on what those folks make, their median income, not based on
they don't make much.
Right. And based on what the median income in Park City resident versus the essential workers, you're absolutely right. Why would you not want your deputies, for example, to have homes in the very areas that they patrol? Because it makes for safer, better oriented, police oriented in the communities are safer. It just makes sense. You don't have your police cars traveling out of the county. That's expensive. You don't have these commuters. You've got immediate calls that, officers can get there, deputies can get there twice as quickly when they live within 10 minutes.
I don't blame Dakota Pacific, because when they heard low income housing and the median income,
affordable housing,
whatever they call it, and the median income is $150K, they saw dollar bills.
And that's rentals. They're not even, that's just constant
They
money
were
coming
like,
in.
oh, this is marvelous.
This is all astounding.
We're going to
They've been
go on.
They've been fighting for this. By the way, they bought the land for $20 million from Boyer Corporation. They bought it for $20 million, and there's estimates that this will be a $750 million project by the time it's finished. So,
Wow.
I mean, you can see why they're fighting so hard for this.
Oh, yeah.
They bought land for nothing. And $20 million for 60 acres in the middle of Kimball Junction.
That's insane.
But that's
and then they get to charge millions because that's the market rate, and yet they got it. Who sold it to them for that cheap?
They're going to sell 10 condos for $2 million each out of the 500, and they'll get the return on their investment right there.
So whose property was it? I know the county had some of it, but who sold it to them initially for that cheap?
It was, the truth is that land was owned by an old timer in Park City, and he was with the church. And the story is he got into financial trouble, and he had to donate that land to the church for his tithing requirement. So the church owned that land, and then Boyer Corporation is an investment arm of the church. So, in the final deal in 2008, the county bought back some of the property, but Boyer owned that land, and then they couldn't bring a high-tech business here because they didn't try very hard. They didn't understand the high-tech business. I do. I came from Silicon Valley. I worked in Silicon Valley for 30 years, and I can tell you that this would make an ideal place for some corporate headquarters. And who wouldn't love to live in or in close proximity to Park City? And certainly
look at Lehigh's boom.
Could live here.
Silicon Slopes has exploded over the past 20 years, and Lehigh is grown. I mean, they're busting at the seams. Can you imagine how beautiful and how I could see a place like Apple, Google wanting to put a headquarters in a place like Park City? That's like getting a headquarters right in Aspen, Colorado.
I know. Let me tell you another tidbit here. I have a source for this too, a very reputable high-tech source, a guy that lives in Park City now. His wife knows people at Microsoft, and he called them up, and Microsoft said that they'd be willing to talk to Dakota Pacific about a tech park. And guess what? Dakota Pacific said no. We're not interested in the tech park. We want to build residents. What does that tell you about the return on residents?
Yeah, that they know their residents. And I just want to say, and I'm not trying to bomb on the church, but any church that is willing to take property from people for tithing needs to they need to sit down and have a chat with Jesus. I just want to say that.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm actually,
Because
that stunned me.
I'll pick my jaw up off the floor next week sometime, but that is shocking.
That stuns me because I think that, and then to turn around and sell it for pennies on the dollar.
And I'm not trying to bomb the church on this whole deal coming together now.
The church is a business. I mean, they're the second largest corporation, I think, in the
if
world
you're going
right now.
if you're going to take property from someone so that individual can make their way to heaven,
That's
I think
right.
you missed the mark on what your job is.
I
Totally agree with that.
Wow, Gary, there's a lot of information to digest here.
So
And
where's-
I would like to know where, if you by chance if you could put or share with us anywhere that you've written or published or where we could actually see some of your articles regarding this, just to give people heads up on everything.
Okay. Well, I have written numerous letters and editorials to the Park Record.
That's the name of your local
the Park Record
paper?
is our local paper. There was one published about 10 days ago, was my latest one. So I've done a number of letters there. And by the way, we had a letter writing campaign to the council. 800 letters were delivered.
800.
800 letters. And guess what the legal department told them? You don't get to read those letters. And so we said,
ridiculous.
I said, so I happen to be at the meeting because I attend all these council meetings. I happen to be at the meeting, and actually the council was asking Margaret Olson, Margaret, do we have to read all these 800 letters? And Margaret said, well, no, you don't, because that has information in it that hasn't been disclosed to the applicant, hasn't been disclosed to Dakota Pacific. So I got up and I said, here's the argument I made. I said, number one, the community has every right to communicate with the council members that they elected. We're their constituents. Number two, give the letters to Dakota Pacific. We'd be happy if they had copies. And so she said, what could she say? Her whole argument is that the applicant wouldn't be seeing this. Oh, did you see this?
We just, Jared just found your recent one. We're going to try to copy the link and share it in the show notes or in the comments, maybe.
The best way to find it is
yes.
If you search, if you search the Park Record newspaper, Gary Peacock, it pulls up and you can go through and read all the articles and all the articles written that include your name in them.
That's right. And I also have had interviews with the Salt Lake Tribune, so you can go. Do you guys know John Gerke down there?
I don't.
Well, if you look his name up, you can find some research where I've been quoted in that paper a number of times. So, and then my main platform is Nextdoor. So I have access to most of the community, and I write columns quite often. Whenever there's a meeting, I'll write something, and I get a huge response from the community. The last thing that we did is the Park Record did a survey a survey to see really how much of the community is really against this. 90% said they were opposed to
Unbelievable.
Dakota Pacific. 90%.
If we are a representative republic, and we are, because that's the Constitution and that's what it says, these elected should absolutely be putting public comment in so they can hear from the people they are accountable to.
They're going to do that.
That that you guys are all being ignored.
We are being ignored because they believe that they're what they call statesmen. And a statesman is elected by their constituents to exercise their best judgment. And last week, Roger Armstrong, who's a entertainment attorney in Southern California, that's his normal job, he's been on the council for 8 years. He's trying to run again. He basically said that we're never going to make all the people happy, and there's going to be people that are against it and for it. And so 5 people here have to decide. And
there's a difference between not making all of the people happy and making all of the people unhappy.
That's exactly, I like that. I'm going to use that. That's good.
So true.
But that is the case. And I had another counselor that told me there's 42,000 people in Summit County. Okay. So I was having a discussion with Melina Stevens, who is now the chairman of the Summit County Council, who is not running for re-election. She voted 5 years ago for Dakota Pacific in the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission voted 4-2 against Dakota Pacific. But the council then took it up, and we've been dealing with that for the last 4 years. But eventually Melina got elected, and she told me that she is a statesman and that she has the right to make an independent decision. And she said that 1,000 people at a public comment meeting wasn't all of Summit County. It's like, what? Nobody could ever remember anything close to this. This is the number one issue in Summit County. Talk to anybody in Summit County that knows a damn thing about the community here, and they'll know about Dakota Pacific.
Well, just search it. I can tell you just from this morning, searching Dakota Pacific, and it is on your news search, it occupies all of that. On your image search, it occupies all that. I mean, it tells you something that stopping Dakota Pacific's maneuvers in Park City is it's the dominant search across the internet right now. It's the dominant population.
Can I just say this? 1,000 people out of 20, how many did you say live in your city, in your county?
42,000.
42,000. 1,000 people out of 42,000 is a pretty good measure of at least a percentage of what people think. And you're saying 95% of those people are in disagreement with this? How else do electeds measure what the public wants? Which, I'm sorry, this woman doesn't understand what a republic is. You're representing other people. You are not given this elected office for you to be an activist. Your job is to represent the people who elected you and do it of course, no one knows what they don't know. And they learn all the both sides of every argument when they become that elected person. So they know what the county can do and can't do. And even if people don't like it or not. But when you have 1,000 people responding to something like this in mass, that's a mass. Because how many of those people actually vote? A lot of people out of 42,000 don't even vote.
No,
but
there's
something
only
like
about
this will get them to the polls.
You can get elected with 6,000 votes to one of those positions.
Exactly.
Because the county is a huge county, and it's mostly rural. But the people that live in Park City and Kimball Junction and the neighborhoods here, this is where the density is, but most of the population is rural.
Right.
You know?
And here's the thing, we get it because we're the second largest county in the state, and our condensed is in Tooele City, and I think we're at 76,000. But we actually, when you get 1,000 people, that's just an astronomical number, especially when 6,000 people probably vote out of all those people.
Tooele County Commission meetings never get 1,000 people, and all of the population of the county lives in Tooele.
The closest we ever got was when the mask mandate was happening, and we filled the council. We filled the room with people that were all absolutely against any mask mandates and getting schools open and all of that. That moved people that were both Democrat and Republican, and it wasn't about party. This was about an issue, and one issue. I don't love one issue voters, but I get it, because when you have electeds ignoring you, blatantly not willing to read your letters, they're not doing their job. I don't care what party they're in. They at least got to hear from the people who put them there.
You know, the reason why they didn't want to read them is because, and I talked to Roger Armstrong about this, he said, well, every letter was the same. They're against it. Next letter, against it. Next letter, against it. So they didn't want to have to read 800 letters because probably 780 of those letters were against it. And people wrote, I was amazed. I saw some of the letters, and they were intelligent and thoughtful and very rational, but also very passionate against this project. And this is the mystery. And the last thing I wrote on, you should get a copy of this from Nextdoor, but I wrote a piece which I referred to, I call it the Theater of the Absurd. You should read this because basically I'm coming it's the hardest piece I've written against the council because we're getting down to the last few weeks of this thing. And literally, if you can imagine this scenario, you're Dakota Pacific, you're asking for an amendment. Shouldn't you be in front of the council trying to persuade them? What project would you approve? Tell me what project you would approve.
Right.
That's not the case. They had the same plan since over a year ago, same plan, not reducing it by any units. Instead, it's the council.
No, the compromise comes from the council side.
The council is desperately begging them to please remove units. So, and essentially what goes unsaid is, so we can approve this. And
I want to know, sorry, Gary, I want to know why this company hasn't reached out to the public. If I was them, that's where I would spend my time and money, is to convince the public why it's a good idea. What can they do to convince the public? The fact that they don't have to is very disturbing to me.
Well, I've noticed with developers, normally when they do a runaround on the public and they get a legislature or a lawmaker in their pocket, they never respond to the public. We saw a lot of that out here when it came to the temple.
Well,
they used our county council or our county commissioners at the time to be the voice of that operation, and the church just went hands off.
That's true.
The church in Heber, they have such strong support in the community, although Heber's growing and less people are going to be members of the church. In fact, you may know the statistic, but for the first time this year, the LDS is no longer the majority in the state of Utah. It went down to 49%.
Yes, it is. That is the first time. And I'm not saying
it's the majority in Utah now.
It's diverse. The church,
like non-denominational?
No, the church, if you line it up different churches, they're still the majority.
Okay.
But the church dropped under 50% of the population. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, because the church does a lot of awesome things for the state and the community. But I think the church
doesn't stay in their lane.
A couple of times have played fast and loose.
They have.
And I'm not saying all the time. And I think that's left an impact. But Utah is growing because California is emptying. And that's just a fact. Utah is going to grow. And as it grows, the church is going to drop off of importance. It's just going to happen because, let's face it, you come from California, not a high LDS population in California. There is a number of them, but it's not a dominant population.
And people are coming from California, even though we think the prices in the Salt Lake Valley are high, they're nothing compared to California.
No. I do work for a guy that come from California, and he says you wouldn't believe, just from selling his house there, middle income house, he says you wouldn't believe what I was able to get.
And how much you can buy, when you come to Utah, but Utah's gone up to one of the most expensive places to live now in the country.
He bought essentially what was a city 100 years ago. He bought it. He didn't buy it, but if it was adjacent, he bought all of Lincoln, the city here in Tooele County. He bought everything.
With what he sold his house for?
With what he sold one normal sized house. And so he's doing good. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he's brought his whole family with him. I mean, he's building new roots because California run him off with their crazy regulations, their anti-family stuff.
Yeah,
very high taxes.
Yeah, the big thing for him, I think, was the anti-family stuff because he's a devout family man, everything else, and that run him off. He couldn't bear sending his kids to public school there anymore and taking the jeopardy.
Communist principles is the state owns your child. You don't.
Yeah. I would argue that's also the Democrat principles,
You said it. I didn't.
Well, no, it is. That's
Well, I really would urge people, if you are from Summit County, to call in. We're at 385-899-2134. Gary, I don't know, but do you want us to leave your information, contact information, where people from your area can get in touch with you? Because I'll put that in the comments. Let me see.
Give them the email address.
Yeah, we'll put your email address in our show notes, and then they can email you. So Gary Peacock.
But I have to say that many people know me now. I'm well known for this, opposition for this project. And so anybody that's read anything about Dakota Pacific has run across my name. But yes, I'm very passionate, but there's hundreds of us, thousands of us that are passionate, and they're going to show up at the next public comment meeting, I guarantee you. And we're going to blow out the council's ears with opposition. We don't know if it'll be enough, however.
So,
because they think they know best.
Let me ask you this. So you told me that if you can get the council to jump on board and fighting this, the council can go back to that lawsuit that they already have in place, that they've already won, reopen that and shut this down. And hopefully, I mean,
wouldn't they have to actually appeal the lawsuit and win before the council can revisit the lawsuit? I mean, they've already got
the lawsuit's active. It's just paused. And both sides, in order to pause a lawsuit, both sides have to pause it. So what it means is that neither side is going to, they're not going to do anything to further their position, and they're not going to appeal it, right? But Dakota Pacific lost already. SB 84 was declared invalid, doesn't apply to Summit County. And so their path was to the appellate courts and eventually to the Utah Supreme Court. Our lawyers are very confident that they can beat them legally. But, as I said, it's a complex issue because people believe something's going to get built on there. And there's also a fear that the legislature can devise language that will pass the courts, and then they can build whatever they want.
Hey, Gary, when is the next meeting on this issue? Is it where I know
Next
that you said the public can't comment, but that would be
next Thursday,
February 22nd, right?
Yeah.
What time and where's it at?
Yeah, where is it going to be?
Oh, he might have froze up again.
No, he's just reading.
Now, I'll look at the agenda for you. But basically, you have two. You can view it on Zoom. If you go to the Summit County website, it says Dakota Pacific. You click that, it'll give you a Zoom link, and then you can watch the whole thing on Zoom. And then it's recorded, and you can watch it later on Facebook, or you can show up at the Richens building, which is the county chambers in Kimball Junction.
At the county chambers.
You can watch it in person. So I think
in Kimball Junction. Sorry, Gary, I'm trying to write this as you talk. So it's the 22nd at the county chambers in Kimball Junction. Is that what you said?
In the Richens building. Yeah, the Richens building, which is the seat of the council.
Richens is spelled R-I-C-C-H.
R-I-C-H-I-N-S. Richens.
R-I-C-H-I-N-S.
Okay, the next meeting is on February 22nd from 3 to 4:30 at the Sheldon Richens building. That's on the agenda is on the Summit County website right now.
From 3
there's no agenda.
to 5:30, you said?
3 to 4:30. They allot 1.5 hours, and they don't even have a topic, because the topic is Dakota Pacific, when are you going to reduce the count? And so they keep asking the same questions every meeting. And the meeting, Dakota Pacific says, we're not, because it doesn't pencil out.
Well, and how convenient they have it at a time when people are at work.
Yes.
It's not going to get a lot of attention. This should be an evening meeting that people can actually participate, or at least be able to go to. And this is Summit County's website that's going to have the Zoom.
Yeah, they can watch the replay.
Option.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to do that, they may as well have the meeting in St. George or, somewhere warm.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch it if you're in the evening or on a weekend. You can watch all these meetings. If you're interested, you can look at some of these meetings, and you'll see the absolute desperation of the council trying to get them to move. And then
yeah,
able to.
Gary,
if you look on screen right now, Dwayne, our call screener, has the Summit County website pulled up, and it is crazy when you look at it. Dakota Pacific has its own set of meetings. That tells you this is a pretty big issue. But yeah,
it's
it looks
the biggest issue in the history of Summit County. I can tell you that it's taken over 4 years, and there's never been a vote on this project, not even once.
I wonder what kind of impact, and I'm talking to you candidates out there. John Curtis is running for Senate. Brad Wilson is running for Senate. Yes. Carolyn Phippen, Trent Staggs. What kind of impact could these candidates have by showing up at a meeting like this for the people? I would love to see this. I mean, isn't Blake Moore your congressman? Yes. Blake Moore, where are you? Get out there to this meeting and just be a representative of the people that elect you. And at Kira Birkeland, these are the meetings they should be attending, where they're actually seeing what's going on, being present, but hearing from the people behind them who don't get to have any public comment during these meetings, listening to their public, because that's your job.
Boy, then you might have a statesman fight. Statesman versus statesman.
You know, you're getting name recognition probably all over the county for your the information you're providing to people and your engagement on this issue and your passion on this issue. Do you know how many people sit in a county on a computer, read something like this? They do nothing but complain. They'll post all the articles about it. They'll sit there and complain about the government's doing this and they're doing this. You're actually getting out there hosting meetings of the people, listening to the people, writing letters, writing op-eds, showing up on our show, talking to both sides, not just Republican, Democrat. Like, you're doing the work. Why haven't you considered running for a seat on that council?
I think it's the worst job that anybody can have.
There we go.
They pay $40,000 a year, something like that.
That's double what they pay here.
And it's a full-time job. And you got lunatics, crazy people, cranky people, and you have a lot of interested parties. But in general, when you don't have an issue like this, very few people pay attention to the council. You know, they're doing all kinds of stuff. People have no idea what they're doing.
That is true.
I do, because in the last 3 years, I've educated myself. I've gone to these meetings. I've met all these people, and now I'm going to other meetings. I went to the truth and taxation meetings. My property taxes went up 50%.
What a coincidence during this whole development talk that your taxes are already going up.
That's because they have 6 assessors for 42,000 people, or I don't know how many residences there are, but they can't assess them. And there was a guy there that came that did all the analysis, and he said Walmart and McDonald's in Kimball Junction, their property taxes went down the same year that many of us, our property taxes went up. Some people's taxes went up 100%. Mine just went up 50%. I didn't
just
plan
50.
for that.
And your assessor's elected.
Well, you got to remember, McDonald's and Walmart are struggling companies. They really need our support. And
that blows my mind, because those businesses are what's supposed to alleviate your tax.
I love this. In the land of the free, we fought a war against a king for 3%.
But you know that the CEOs of those companies, they have to maintain their 10 houses and their private jets. They got a lot of expenses.
I'll bet each one of them has a 2-week-a-year vacation home on the top of the highest hill there in Park City.
In Park City, right.
We got another guy here, Matthew Prince. Do you know about him? He's the richest man in Utah now. He is the president and founder of Cloudflare. Cloudflare's a security company. This guy came into Park City, claims that he's a Utah resident and so forth, but he came into Park City and wanted to build this monstrous house above Old Town. And he decided that he didn't want to go through the planning commission in Park City. So he went down to the legislator. This is last year. Went down to the legislature, and he got a legislator to put a rider in a bill to bypass the council. Okay. So the council.
This is corrupt as hell.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well, wait till I finish the story. So the council found out about it. Nan Morrell, she's the mayor, a bunch of council, Ryan Dickey, they went down to meet with Brad Wilson, and they got it taken out. There was tremendous criticism of this move that he's worth $3.5 billion. So there was all this criticism in our local paper. Our only local paper is the Park Record. What did he do? He bought the Park Record.
Well, that's what you do when you want to control the narrative.
Right out of the Bezos playbook.
Yeah.
I know. He bought the Park Record, and the editor lives in one of his properties. Well, I mean,
this is a Soros playbook.
These are facts. I'm sorry, but this stuff's happening in a little town like Park City. Can you imagine all the stories that we have never heard of because they managed to keep them secret somehow?
I think Dwayne made a point. That's why we're here. That the whole reason that the media group in KMMU, that their whole goal with us coming on, as our whole goal when we started, was we want to educate people with truth. That's it. And if we don't have the truth,
Holly does. I'm here for the comedy.
He's here for the fun. But if I can't get to the truth or I don't know it, then I'm going to find people who can share it with me. And I don't want to be censored or worry about people. I mean, after COVID, you couldn't even suggest the jab was dangerous, let alone that you had a freedom to decide whether to take it or not.
Yeah.
So KMMU and the Main Street Media, they were so ready for truth that they wanted people that are just willing to expose it. Whether we like the answer or not, we would much rather know what's going on to give people the opportunity to not only have, I don't know, some skin in the game or the knowledge instead of gleeful, ignorance, but to make an educated voter. Because what's happening is, these issues are getting missed because people are so sick and tired of being fed propaganda. They're turning off news channels that used to be respected because there's no truth anymore. It's lost. And there's an agenda behind everything. And I'll tell you, there's no agenda where we're concerned. In fact, we'll go off the rails more times than I can even count. But we are not trying to push a certain agenda. We're trying to understand the truth.
I hope that you need to be truthful and credible. I have no dog in the fight here. I'm not going to make any money off of this any which way. And I'm just trying to do something for my community. And that's the only motive. And the deeper I've gotten into this, the more disturbed I become at uncovering all this corruption in the state legislature and watching the park record get bought by a billionaire that tried to circumvent our planning commission. This stuff happens. It's unbelievable. But I do not believe that the council is, taking gold bars. I don't think there's any serial number gold bars over at Roger's house, to tell you the truth.
There's not a Menendez closet full of gold and fancy cars that his wife procured. It's.
There doesn't have to be, though. There doesn't even have to be.
I would like to see the county at least try to come to a happy medium saying, look, commercial real estate is going to theoretically should alleviate taxes on the populace, should bring more dynamic opportunities to the town, to the county, all that, whatever. So if they could even get Dakota Pacific to do it half and half deal or something, that's still a win.
They don't have to negotiate because they think they've already won.
But these guys, and honestly, why wouldn't they think that? When they've got the state legislatures in their house, the state legislatures are putting earmarks in bills to give them, they've got a bill over here about how the depth of the concrete of sidewalks should be. And down in the bottom, they write in, and we want to do this on the side. That's craziness. That's a let them eat cake moment.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm going to read some comments really fast from Dwayne, our call screener and producer for today and every day. We appreciate him. He says these issues are in every county, and I think that's how I kind of started the show. Is this isn't just about Summit County, folks. This can happen to every single county in this country.
Every county, every state,
and there's a reason why there's a reason why you need to have local control. Because when they can go behind you and get into the state legislature, and he says the county council is being intimidated and bullied, and that's probably huge. And he says, God bless you, Gary. We need more citizens like you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I think this is where I have a hard time. I know my county or my state legislatures. I know them. I would be so angry if I discovered one of them voted because their finger was too fat and the other one voted because she didn't get a chance to read the bill, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway because it was going the majority.
How crazy.
I don't care. You stand up for your people.
How crazy is that? We sent you there with one job. One
Right.
job.
You had
And
one
you only
job
have-
to do and you failed.
You have two buttons. Are they too close together? Do we need to build you a disabled button clicker box?
You have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, as Judge Judy says. So
and
you can
10
listen.
fingers to push no.
Right?
Yeah.
Why aren't they standing up and saying, listen, the people of my county are overwhelmingly against this? How is this even a thing?
It's insane.
I've also been tracking the state legislature because we were tracking these bills. You know that there's over 550 bills that are passed in the state legislature? How could anybody read? And these bills are hundreds of pages long. How can anybody, any legislator, seriously read all this stuff and vote intelligently on it? It all comes down to the leadership. The leadership, they're lobbied by various people, the generator of the bill, and if it sounds good, affordable housing. Yeah, we want to vote for affordable housing, and that's what happened here. Is
it's a buzzword
for affordable housing. It's not true.
Yeah, it's a buzzword. It's just a buzzword. If they throw that on anything, if I put a bill forward right now that said, every fifth male under the age of 14 will castrate, and every female has to have half their head shaved, and affordable housing at the bottom, this state would look really different come next week.
I know. We'd have a lot of bald people and not so many children.
That is right. That is right.
This is
because
upsetting.
that is the buzzword that everyone's screaming for, because housing is a legitimate problem.
It is a really big problem.
But the housing problem hits a lot higher than just saying affordable housing. The housing problem hits on, we're overregulated on how and where we build housing. We have a problem with water across the state. And I would argue, maybe we need to look at, how does Arizona do it? Because Arizona has a lot less water than we do, and they seem to still keep up.
They get a lot from us.
But
we get. Let me make a comment about that interesting little fact for you here. The water in Arizona and Utah and California and Nevada and Colorado comes from the Colorado River. A lot of it does. And there's a 5-state pact. And 4 of those states agreed to enter into voluntary allotment. The 5th state didn't, which was California.
That is right.
We've got huge, we supply 25% of the country's food comes out of the Central Valley, out of the San Joaquin Valley. And so they said, we need water for irrigation. Well, in Arizona, down in the Phoenix area, they kept building developments in the desert. And some of those developments that got built in the last few years, they don't have any water. They had to sue the state because they cut off their water. Can you imagine if you spent, down in Arizona, it probably costs $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for a house, and you built it, and it's a brand new development. And all of a sudden, they say, "Oh, sorry, there's no water here because we don't have any water." But they allowed them, the state legislature, somebody allowed them to build those developments, right? They're just irresponsible.
Well, speaking about irresponsible, how many reservoirs has California built when they're in this record rainfall moment? How much water are they collecting and preserving when they use so much? Why are we seeing so little? Like California complains all the time they don't have enough water. And yet they don't
build a new reservoir in 25 or 30 years.
Right.
Not a brand new one.
And it's sad because they're watching all this rain just go right to waste. I mean, I believe God gives us what we need. And boy, did he ever last year with the
Reservoirs
snow
pollute.
and water here in Utah.
Reservoirs pollute, and they don't look good on a mayor or governor's resume. Reservoirs
We'll
are
enjoy those
evil.
rolling brownouts and
and-
blackouts once all those EVs come into power.
You know what? But EVs have zero pollution. We know this.
Right.
No,
right.
there is no pollution involved with electric vehicles, and so
They don't have to
They
dig up
look-
whole countries and minerals and destroy and
slave
pollute other
labor.
countries.
slave labor negates the bad actions.
I don't want to see California or Utah become California. That's the last thing I want. And if I feel like we're seeing that in our legislatures now, like our legislators that are up there now, and they're just falling into this this mindset where they're statesmen versus you're elected representatives, which means you're my voice and my neighbors. And we chose you to express our wishes, knowing what you know and what your duties are and what's capable of your city or county. Yes, you've got to take that into account. And you represent me, the Republican, and my neighbor, the Democrat. And you've got to make decisions based on that. When you decide that my voice doesn't matter, you are no longer you're no longer eligible to be unelected as far as I'm concerned.
Well, remember, North Korea is a Democratic People's Republic of, so
That's true.
um
Well, I don't that it's good for California to be a one-party state any more than I think it's good for Utah to be a one-party state. You know, we have to have a representation from everybody. And when you have just a single voice, minorities get downtrodden, right? And that's why the taxes are so high in California, right? The legislature has all these social programs. They actually entertained a program in the state of California called reparations. You know about that,
Oh, I
right?
just saw
that was out of San Francisco. It was
That's right.
particularly San Francisco. Now they had to give up on it because they finally saw what the numbers would look like, and San Francisco cannot afford it. But they were gonna give every black person $1 million in a home.
Yeah.
And they made it an option for businesses to contribute to the reparations. And how many businesses lined up to do that?
It's hilarious. What were they thinking? Or here's another funny one. A couple weeks ago, Chicago City Council, right?
Yes.
Chicago's notoriously ran well, no crime, not a lot of blood in the streets every weekend.
True.
They decided to take their precious time to vote in Chicago City Council to vote in a ceasefire between Israel and Palestine a couple weeks ago. Now
that worked well.
I don't know if Chicago has a map or a globe. You could probably go into any elementary school and find a cartoon drawing of the earth. And then find somebody who knows where places are and say, show me where I live. And they'll point, and show me where Israel is. And they'll point way over there. And
it's in Chicago.
Did we not just waste a whole bunch of stupid time?
Hey, did you just see the whole argument with the lady who's prosecuting Trump in Atlanta?
Oh,
she couldn't tell what continent she's been to in this question. That was humor on wheels.
Old
That's
Fanny.
an elected person who has a law degree. So
That's unbelievable. The
losing
stories
hope
there are unbelievable.
it really is.
Right.
So I think that we're gonna let you get out of here. We've gotten 2 hours of your time.
Tell us one last time about people if they want to, if they can't make it to the meeting. I don't suppose they'll have it open for comments or call-ins during the meeting.
Said no.
But what can
Yes,
they do
they
ahead
will.
of time?
They will, in the public comment meeting, there will be a public comment meeting where we're going to bring out another 1,000 people. They can,
Good.
I would strongly encourage them to come to the meeting. Don't do it on Zoom because
Take the day off.
Feel you on Zoom.
Okay, you're talking about the February 22nd meeting. Is that right, Gary? Or is there a different meeting you're referring to?
I've heard that February 22nd date a number of times. It's not true. There's no public comment meeting on
Right. I'm just wondering
22nd.
when is the next public comment? We're
I
looking
have
at the
seen that
website now.
It's scheduled. It was supposed to be last night. That was February 15th was the date for the past 5 weeks until last week when they suspended that.
Council.
They were supposed to vote on February 20th. Any concessions from Dakota Pacific, they're extending these talks that have with any meaningful movement in Dakota Pacific, or UDOT isn't moving up anything they're doing either. So it's ridiculous. Now I've got all the Dakota Pacific meetings here, and let's see.
So if you
No,
would,
on February
you're on
22nd,
Facebook, right?
Yeah, well,
Because if
I'm
you're on
not, yeah,
Facebook,
no.
Gary,
But February 22nd is just another meeting with Dakota Pacific, and that is not public comment. Public comment has not been scheduled. It was suspended last week. The vote was suspended, and this is all ridiculous because no matter how many times they ask and cajole, Dakota Pacific has the legislature in their pocket, and they believe that they can get a piece of legislation that will defeat the court. And I think they can. I do think they can.
well, what I'm asking is, would you please, maybe you were in a text thread with us, would you text us when the next meeting does happen where the public can comment? We can help you get people there. We'll advertise it on our end. And then I'll let the Republican Party chair also let her folks know so that they can also go and support. And I'm just hoping that people will be inclined to get there in person. The bodies will maybe have an impact. And if anything, invite the Tribune, invite Deseret News, invite outside, media.
Yeah.
Invite Channel 2, Channel 4.
We're going to try to get the congressman there and the representatives. Mike Kohler came to the last public comment meeting last year, and that's where I gave him a tongue lashing about voting for SB 8.
Yeah. Well, Gary, this is a great time. It's election year, and this is a great time. Get in touch with these senatorial candidates, the gubernatorial candidates, get in touch with congressional candidates, have them show up for the people. I mean, let's see who shows up.
We tried to get a meeting with Governor Cox, and I actually had his assistant, and we couldn't get a meeting, not even with members of the county council. He would not see us. Governor Cox would not see us, and he signed off that horrible law that now is invalid. But it's disgraceful.
Well, I think that if there's never been a better time than in an election year where you've got a little bit of leverage and you also get enough people engaged. The people of Park City, a lot of those people are donors to a lot of these people's campaigns, and they should absolutely, if they're a donor to any campaign, those donors should get on the phone with these people and say, hey, show up to my city and come listen to the people here, regardless of their party membership.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the education.
I hope you're more up to speed and as outraged as the community is, and you can see why. There really isn't another side to this. They're putting in those units. There's no traffic solution. It's just greed. That's all we're witnessing is greed.
Well, if there was another side to this, you would see this company out in front of the people defending their side. The fact that they don't have to speaks volumes that they either think it's already in the bag or it is already in the bag, and we're just in a waiting game now. And you've got electeds who are trying not to fall and lose their seats as basically, prisoners of this whole thing. They're just going to be collateral damage through all this, and they're just not going to get involved or be boisterous because they're trying to alleviate some of the damage that's going to come from it. If you've got this many people upset, I can't believe the county council members that are running for office again or trying to take the seat.
They're afraid.
Aren't absolutely upfront.
There's no question that they're afraid. There's no question that
but
they're
they
afraid.
should be.
And this is very public, and I'm not the only one saying vote them out. And so as it gets closer here, it so happens we're hoping that we can get this done, but unfortunately the Democratic caucus is on March 5th, and we might not have a vote by then. And so they'll have the cover of that.
It's by design.
I know. That's probably why we delayed this thing.
The Republican caucus is March 5th. Now the Democrat caucus, usually they're just going to be voting they're doing their
Delegates.
They're voting for their presidential nominee, as are we. But we will have our caucus. That link is up and ready to go at the Utah State Party, so people can pre-register for caucus if you're a Republican. But that shouldn't stop you. Run as a delegate. Run as a county delegate.
I helped get elected a person that's against Dakota Pacific and will definitely vote no. I helped him get elected. I gave him money. I campaigned for him, and he got elected.
See, that's how it works. And hopefully he's going to represent your voice.
He is.
And everyone else's. So with that, I just want to thank you again. Gary, this has been absolutely so informative. I appreciate your engagement with the topic and with us and getting your word out where you are. Please stay in touch with us on the text thread. If any news comes up.
Contact me anytime. And I'll make sure you guys know when the public comment meeting is and any other developments that come up.
Please do. And then let us help you as far as getting the word out in your county for the folks we know there. I love Summit County. It's just, I'd love to see some red specks in there for the Republican side, just because you're right. It is all blue. It'd be nice to have a couple different ideals coming to the table. And
I
for
think there's
starters,
a good chance if Roger Armstrong votes, there's a strong Republican candidate. I've talked to him already. And I can tell you that lots of people are going to support a Republican because Roger is supporting Dakota Pacific. That singular issue could kill him.
what's the candidate's name that's running against him?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Hold on.
Sorry.
Can you hold on just 1 second?
Absolutely. Let's give him some attention. Can you imagine Bridger Bolander making a vote without any discussion with anyone? I cannot imagine that type of
We are the most
representation.
blessed county in the United States. That's it.
We really are. We've got a lot of great
Yep.
engagement from our electeds.
Let's see.
You say there's 3 seats open.
Tory Welsh.
Corey Welsh.
Tory with a T.
Tory.
Welsh. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually spent 90 minutes with him last week, urging him to expose. He's against Dakota Pacific, he says. And I said, you want to make a strategic strike against the council member you're running against? Make sure everybody knows you're against Dakota Pacific, because Roger won't say.
Here's the hard part that I see is that when you have county politics turnover because of some huge fractal issue like this one is, it never turns out well long term. It always causes like a rift and like a bad juju in the whole county or state or anything like that. And it's too bad that this council's allowing it to come to this place.
Yeah, it turns neighbor against neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that with the temple
So where we
development here.
Yeah.
But
The temple out here, it tore a tiny town, Erda. The town is so tiny, no one's ever heard of it. A population of like what, 12, 13, 12 and a half. I don't know. They've got two sticks that poke out of a board, and they go and change the numbers every day. Like they're judging
They're a city
gymnastics.
now, though, because of it.
But
They
because of that,
incorporated-
it caused this big rift. And in this tiny town, that rift lives on,
Yeah.
3-4 years later.
Yeah. But this is the thing though, when you've got this whole group of people against one issue, that's rare. And
Well,
then
that's
when
true.
you've got a government ignoring them, that's rare.
That's true, but it'll still.
That rift is not gonna get fixed until someone stands
And I
up
don't
to
blame the people. I blame the council for it. The council allowed it to come here.
I made this point in one of the letters I wrote, that this is a nonpartisan issue, and in the world, a country of extreme polarization, almost everybody here agrees that this is a bad thing, and yet the three people. It only takes 3 people on the council to vote yes, and it's done. And
Yeah,
it's a sad state of affairs.
Well, what a great year for an election year.
I know,
Because you got
we've
3
never had
seats
this kind of
open.
leverage before.
Right. And if these people aren't listening, get them out.
yeah.
Vote your conscience on this, people, regardless if they're red and you're blue, whatever side you're on. Go to the people who are listening to you and who are going to do what you want as a populace. Because if you do that, if you don't, and you continue, this is the problem with cities that are all blue and they complain about crime or they complain about taxes. When you keep doing the same thing and voting for the same people over and over, nothing changes. That is exactly insanity. So make a change.
That's the voters' fault. That's the voters' responsibility. And that's why we're saying, if you don't turn out for public comment and you don't vote these people out, and you're stuck in traffic for the next 10 years, then it's because you didn't vote.
Elections have consequences.
Right.
And when you've got a huge group, you have 46,000 people and only 6,000 are showing up to vote, that 6,000 is deciding for you what you want. If you don't go out and vote yourself, you get everything you deserve. You get what those 6,000 people vote for you because you've said nothing, done nothing. So Gary, on that note, thank you for what you're doing, and stay in touch with us, and we'd love to have you on again if there's new developments. We've been trying to get after legislative session's over. I really want to get Kira Birkeland in here and get talking to her about the issues and some of the bills that she's been supporting. But I'd be curious if she's been able to remedy this with what's happening in Summit County.
Ask her about her bill on the HTRZ. This would be a good bill for Summit County, but there's a belief that it's never even going to get out of committee, that it'll never be voted on even on the floor. But you can ask her about that.
Will do.
All right, Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Gary.
Have a wonderful night. And we'll talk again soon, hopefully.
Very good. Thanks again for the time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.